There comes a moment in every person's life when someone they deeply trusted chooses to break that trust. And in that single moment, the world as you knew it stops making sense. Betrayal is not just a wound to the heart. It is an earthquake that shakes the very foundation of who you are. It questions your judgment, steals your peace, and leaves you wondering, how could I not see this coming? But here is the truth that most people never discover. Your greatest transformation is hiding inside your deepest pain. Every scar you carry is proof that you survived something that was designed to destroy you. The people who have been broken open by betrayal are not the weakest in the room. They are the ones being prepared for greatness. History's most powerful leaders, healers, and visionaries were not people who lived without pain. They were people who refused to be defined by it. You did not come this far, carry this much, and fight this hard just to stay broken. Today, we stop mourning what was lost and start mining the gold buried beneath the wreckage. Because healing is not about forgetting, it is about rising. And your story is not over. In fact, the best chapter is just beginning. Betrayal has a way of stopping you completely in your tracks. One moment you are building a life, trusting someone, investing your energy, your love, your loyalty. And then suddenly, without warning, the ground disappears beneath your feet. The shock alone is enough to paralyze you. And in that paralysis, the mind begins to spiral, replaying moments, searching for signs you missed, questioning every memory you thought was real. It feels like the cruelest kind of loss, because you are not just mourning a person or a relationship, you are mourning the version of your future you had already begun to believe in. Most people, when they experience betrayal, make the mistake of treating it as a final verdict. They allow that one painful event to become the closing statement of their story. They shrink. They withdraw. They build walls so high that even light cannot get through. And who could blame them? When something that meant everything to you is torn away by the very hands you trusted most, retreat feels not just natural, it feels necessary. But retreat, when it becomes permanent, is where potential goes to die. It is where dreams quietly suffocate under the weight of unprocessed pain. But what if everything you lost was never meant to be your destination? What if the relationship that ended, the friend who turned their back, the partner who walked away, the colleague who betrayed your confidence, what if all of it was a redirection in disguise? Nature itself operates this way. A river does not mourn when a boulder blocks its original path. It simply finds a new direction, and in doing so, it often discovers landscapes far more beautiful than where it was originally headed. You are no different. The obstruction was not your ending. It was your rerouting. Think about the most defining chapters of your life. Were they not born from your hardest moments? Every version of you that you are proud of today was forged in a fire you once begged to escape. The betrayal you are carrying right now, as heavy and as unbearable as it feels, is doing something to you beneath the surface that your comfort zone never could. It is stripping away what no longer serves you. It is forcing you to rediscover who you are when everything external is taken away. It is revealing a strength you would have never known existed had life simply remained easy and undisturbed. There is a reason the most powerful, most empathetic, most resilient human beings you will ever meet are always the ones who have suffered the most deeply. They did not arrive at wisdom through luck or comfort. They were carved into it. Every scar on their soul is a credential. Every tear they once cried became a language through which they now connect with others in ways that the untested never can. Betrayal, as devastating as it is, has a strange and almost sacred ability to initiate you into a version of yourself that ordinary circumstances simply cannot reach. So before you curse the door that closed on you, consider the possibility that it was never your door to begin with. Consider that what felt like someone taking everything from you was actually life clearing the path for something your limited vantage point could not yet see. The pain is real. Do not let anyone minimize that. But pain and purpose are not opposites. In fact, they have always been the most unlikely of partners, walking hand in hand through every great human story ever told. And as you sit with that truth, it becomes impossible to ignore the question quietly rising within you. There is a dangerous lie that many of us were taught from a very young age, that feeling too deeply is a flaw, that tears are weakness, that anger is something to be ashamed of, that if you are hurting, you should tuck it away, compose yourself, and present the world with a version of you that is unshaken and unmoved. And so we learn to perform strength instead of build it. We learn to suppress instead of process. We learn to smile through storms that were quietly destroying us from the inside out. And the cost of that performance, paid in sleepless nights, fractured relationships, and hollow silences, has been far greater than any of us were ever warned about. When betrayal enters your life, it does not arrive quietly. It detonates. And in the aftermath of that explosion, you will feel things that frighten you with their intensity. Rage so hot it surprises you. Grief so heavy it makes ordinary tasks feel impossible. A sadness that arrives in waves, sometimes without warning, sometimes triggered by the smallest and most unexpected things. A song, a smell, a corner of a room that holds a memory you no longer know what to do with. And the instinct, especially for those who pride themselves on being strong, is to shut all of it down as quickly as possible. To get back to normal. To stop feeling so much. But that instinct, however understandable, is one of the most costly mistakes you can make. Your emotions, every single one of them, are not random chaos. They are intelligent. They are data. They are your inner world's most honest and precise communication system, sending you information that your rational mind is often too defended to receive on its own. Anger, for instance, is not simply destruction. It is a signal that a boundary was violated, that something sacred to you was treated as disposable, that you deserve better than what you were given. Grief is not weakness. It is the measure of how deeply you loved, how fully you committed, how genuinely you showed up. And even the confusion, the numbness, the inability to make sense of what happened, these are not signs that something is wrong with you. They are signs that something was done to you that your spirit is still working to reconcile. The people who heal most completely from betrayal are never the ones who felt the least. They are the ones who allowed themselves to feel everything, fully, honestly, without judgment, and then chose to use what those feelings revealed. They sat with the anger long enough to understand what it was protecting. They moved through the grief without rushing it, without medicating it into silence, without distracting themselves from its necessary work. They treated their emotional landscape not as an enemy to be conquered, but as a map to be read. And in reading that map with courage and patience, they discovered things about themselves, their values, their needs, their non-negotiables, that years of comfortable living had never forced them to confront. This is the hidden gift buried inside emotional pain. It strips away every pretense. When you are truly broken open by betrayal, you no longer have the energy to be who everyone else needs you to be. The masks fall. The performances end. And what remains, raw, unfiltered, and achingly real, is you. The actual you. The you that existed before the world taught you to edit yourself for approval. And meeting that version of yourself, as uncomfortable and unfamiliar as it can feel, is one of the most profound and necessary encounters of your entire life. Because you cannot build an authentic future on top of a false self. Healing requires truth. And your emotions, however painful, are among the most truthful things about you. So do not silence what you feel. Do not rush yourself through a grief that has not finished teaching you. Do not mistake numbness for healing or distraction for recovery. Sit with what is real. Honor the full weight of what you have been through, because it deserves to be honored. Your sensitivity is not the reason you were hurt. It is the very thing that makes you capable of the depth, the love, and the wisdom that is still waiting to emerge from all of this. And as you begin to trust your emotions as guides rather than burdens, something quietly but powerfully begins to shift within you. A new clarity starts to form, a clarity about what you will carry forward and what you will finally, firmly, leave behind. There is something no one tells you about being betrayed, that buried beneath the devastation, beneath the disbelief and the heartbreak, is one of the most clarifying experiences a human being can ever go through. Because betrayal, in its most brutal honesty, shows you exactly where your boundaries were absent. It illuminates, with painful precision, the places where you gave too freely, trusted too quickly, silenced your instincts too often, and accepted treatment that quietly whispered to you long before it ever screamed. And while that realization can initially feel like self-blame, it is not. It is not about what you did wrong. It is about what you now know, and what you now know has the power to change everything. Before the betrayal, many of us operated on hope rather than standards. We love people for their potential rather than their consistency. We excuse behavior that made us uncomfortable because the thought of losing the relationship felt more threatening than the slow erosion of our own self-respect. We told ourselves stories that they would change, that we were being too sensitive, that love required us to endure, that loyalty meant staying regardless of what staying was costing us. And in telling ourselves those stories, we inadvertently sent a message to others and to ourselves that our comfort, our dignity, and our peace were negotiable. Boundaries are not walls built out of fear. They are declarations built out of self-worth. And for many of us, it took a betrayal of the deepest kind to finally understand the difference. The beautiful and unexpected truth about broken trust is that it forces a reckoning. It forces you to sit down with yourself, perhaps for the first time in a very long time, and ask the questions you had been too busy, too afraid, or too comfortable to ask before. What do I actually need from the people in my life? What behavior am I willing to accept? And what behavior signals that it is time to walk away? Where have I been shrinking myself to make others more comfortable? Where have I been so focused on being loved that I forgot to protect the person being loved, myself? These are not easy questions, but they are the right ones. And betrayal, as unwelcome as it is, has a ruthless gift for making sure you finally face them. Every boundary you establish after a betrayal is not a reaction born from bitterness. It is a boundary born from knowledge. There is a profound difference between the two. Bitterness closes you off to everyone indiscriminately, painting the whole world with the sins of one person. But wisdom, the wisdom that comes from genuinely processing what happened and understanding why, teaches you to be discerning. It teaches you to observe patterns rather than just hear words. It teaches you that trust is not something you hand over at the beginning of a relationship like a gift. It is something that is built slowly, demonstrated consistently, and earned through action over time. That understanding alone is worth more than years of therapy, because it fundamentally changes how you enter every relationship that comes after this one. And here is where it becomes truly powerful. When you begin to honor your boundaries, when you begin to say no without guilt, to walk away without over-explaining, to choose your peace without apologizing for it, something remarkable happens to the relationships that remain in your life. They become realer. They become cleaner. The people who are meant to be in your world will not be threatened by your standards. They will rise to meet them. And the people who disappear when you stop accepting less than you deserve were never truly there for you to begin with. Your boundaries do not push the right people away. They filter out the wrong ones and create the space, finally, genuinely, for the right ones to enter. Because the version of you that existed before this betrayal was generous to a fault, loving beyond reason, and perhaps a little too willing to carry the weight of relationships that were never balanced to begin with. That version of you was not weak. That version of you was extraordinary. But extraordinary people deserve extraordinary protection, and that protection begins from within. It begins the moment you decide that your trust is precious, that your energy is sacred, that your heart, though it has been wounded, is worth guarding with the same fierce devotion you once gave so freely to others. And as that conviction begins to take root in the deepest part of who you are, something begins to stir. Something that goes far beyond protecting yourself from future pain, something that reaches toward a freedom so complete, so unexpected, that it can only be understood by those who have discovered what waits on the other side of letting go. Forgiveness may be the most misunderstood concept in the entire human experience. When we hear the word, most of us instinctively recoil. Because somewhere along the way, we were taught that to forgive is to excuse, to minimize, to pretend that what happened did not matter, or worse, to open the door for the same person to hurt us all over again. And so we hold onto our anger like armor. We clutch our resentment like evidence, replaying the betrayal over and over in our minds, as though by remembering it vividly enough, by staying angry enough, we are somehow protecting ourselves from ever being foolish again. But what we do not realize, what no one ever warned us about, is that the person we are punishing most severely in all of that holding on is never the one who hurt us. It is ourselves. Resentment is one of the heaviest things a human being can carry. It does not announce itself dramatically. It settles in quietly, disguising itself as justified anger, as self-protection, as righteousness. And slowly, without you even noticing, it begins to color everything around you. It colors how you see new people who have done nothing wrong. It colors how you show up in spaces that have nothing to do with what happened. It colors your laughter, making it slightly hollow. It colors your hope, making it slightly guarded. It places an invisible ceiling on how fully you allow yourself to feel joy, because somewhere in the back of your mind, a part of you is still standing in the wreckage of something that happened long ago but never truly ended inside of you. This is why forgiveness is not a gift you give to the person who hurt you. Forgiveness has almost nothing to do with the other person. They may never apologize. They may never acknowledge what they did. They may go on living their life completely unbothered while you are still carrying the weight of what they put down and walked away from. Waiting for their remorse before you allow yourself to heal is one of the most painful and unnecessary sentences you can impose upon yourself. Forgiveness is the decision, made entirely by you, for you, to stop allowing a past event to continue stealing from your present. It is the moment you reclaim your own narrative, refuse to let someone who has already taken so much continue to take your peace, and choose, with every ounce of your being, to set yourself free. There is also a layer of forgiveness that is rarely spoken about, and it may be the most important layer of all: forgiving yourself. Because betrayal almost always arrives packaged with self-blame. You torture yourself with the moments you ignored your instincts. You punish yourself for the love you gave so openly, as though loving deeply was the crime rather than the betrayal itself. But you made every decision you made with the information, the emotional tools, and the level of awareness you had at the time. You were not naive, you were human. And the human heart, in its most beautiful and most vulnerable state, always chooses to believe in people. So lay it down, not for them, not because the pain was not real, but because you are too alive, too full of unlived days and unmet possibilities, to spend another moment chained to a story that has already ended. And as you finally release that weight, something extraordinary begins to stir within you, something that no amount of pain could ever extinguish. There comes a moment in the aftermath of every great pain where you stand at a crossroads, not between staying and leaving, not between forgiving and holding on, but between shrinking and rising. And that moment, quiet as it may feel, is the most consequential moment of your entire healing journey. Because the world does not need another person who survived their pain in silence and disappeared into a smaller, safer, more guarded version of themselves. The world needs your story, your scars, and the unbreakable version of you that refused to be defined by what was done to you, Look at everything you have walked through to arrive at this moment. You felt the earthquake of betrayal, and did not let it bury you. You honored your emotions instead of silencing them, rebuilt your boundaries out of self-worth rather than bitterness, and chose the radical, breathtaking act of forgiveness. Not for them, but for the freedom that only you deserve to feel. Every single one of those steps required a courage that most people will never fully understand unless they have walked this exact same road. Your comeback is not just your greatest story, it is your greatest gift to every person who is still standing in the rubble of their own betrayal, wondering if healing is even possible, wondering if the pain will ever lift. When you rise, you become living proof that it is possible. When you speak your truth, you give someone else permission to speak theirs. When you choose to live fully and unapologetically after everything that tried to diminish you, you become something the darkness never anticipated, a light that no storm could extinguish.